He just collapsed. He was like shifting to the left, and then he just fell on the road, and I picked him up. His face was drooping more. Today I want to share a story about my dog Sebastian, and this is one of the hardest videos I've had to make so far. Even just looking at all the old photos and the videos and the footage that I wanted to make this video just made me like quite upset, because it was quite a traumatic experience for us. A couple of months ago I noticed Sebastian had this really heavy breathing. It just sounded like so congested. And because he has a mitral valve condition, I was actually scared that he had fluid in his lungs. I was checking the breathing rate and it seemed fine, but after a couple of days I thought I'd take him to the vet because it just sounded so congested. And so I took him to the vet, and she said that he has a cold or an allergy, and basically it was dismissed as an allergy because they said that they couldn't really figure out whether it's a cold or an allergy, but she could hear the congested breathing. And she had recommended me just to get some antihistamines. But the next day when he was eating, I noticed all this drool and saliva coming down the side of his face, and he had a little head tilt, and by that evening I could tell something was wrong. Like his left face was really drooping, and then I thought, oh my god, he has a facial, palsy. And because I'm an optometrist, I started to check his blink reflex, and he wasn't blinking, and I realized that my dog was paralyzed in the left side of his face. The next day when we were going for our morning walk, I noticed that he was walking a little unbalanced, like he was walking like a puppy, kind of like shifting from side to side. And then I was freaking out thinking, oh my god, he's got something in his brain, some sort of like hemorrhage or nerve damage. And I took him to the vet, and then they referred me to SASH North Ryde, and we got back home first, and then when we got out of the car he was walking, and all of a sudden his legs gave way and he just collapsed. He was like shifting to the left, and then he just fell on the road, and I picked him up. And luckily my neighbor offered to drive us to SASH because I thought maybe Sebastian was going to die. So we got to SASH, so we got to ED at SASH North Ryde, and the ED doctor checked him, and his vitals were fine, his pupillary reaction was fine. There was nothing like major where they thought, he has some sort of brain thing going on. And she said that we couldn't really get into an appointment with the neurologist. But we couldn't get an appointment with the neurologist. But she said, oh, the neurologist is actually free for 5 minutes. Do you want me to take him out back? And I was like, yes, please, just take him there and get him checked out. And the neurologist said, he doesn't look like he has any of those signs where it's like red flags where you have to get an MRI straight away. So they thought that he was idiopathic, and they said, okay, come back for next week for a proper workout with the neurologist, and maybe he needs MRI at that time, they don't know. So I was really relieved that, you know, it was nothing like, you know, overly like, oh my god, he's got some like, you know, mass in his brain or some hemorrhage or something where or ischemia where he needs attention straight away. So we went back home, and so basically the emergency explained that he has ataxia, and ataxia is when, so the facial nerve in the brain runs next to the vestibular nerve, which is the nerve for balance, and because the facial nerve was so inflamed, it was affecting his balance. And in the report from SASH, it said to make my house padded in case he gets injured. And the next like few weeks he was actually just so bad, like the ataxia was pretty bad. Because he had the facial nerve palsy on the left side, his head tilt was drooping on the left side, and he was shifting his whole body to the left. And I didn't take obviously many videos of that because I was trying to make sure that he wasn't falling over when he was walking. I had to support him. I had to hold his tail. When he was going to the bathroom, I would hold his tail and then, you know, the side of his body so he doesn't topple over. And he just was so unwell. He didn't sleep very well, and some days he would sleep at 2 a.m. Sometimes he would sleep at 5 a.m. would stay up all night, and I could tell in his eyes just he was so unwell. He just looked so unwell, and he was looking at me like, what's happening to me? And basically So basically I had to feed him water with a syringe because he wasn't able to swallow with the left side of his face paralyzed, and he wasn't able to seal his mouth. For about a week we slept on the floor because he had such bad ataxia. He was walking around like a drunken puppy, and it was actually pretty scary living in a terrace, you know, with the stairs, and I thought it's too dangerous for him for us to be upstairs. So we went back to the neurologist at SASH the next week, and the neurologist said that he has idiopathic facial nerve paralysis, which means that they don't know what caused the facial nerve palsy, but then it happens, and it's apparently overrepresented in his breed in Cavaliers, and that the blink reflex actually comes back in 50% of the cases, and that kind of really scared me, thinking that my dog is not going to blink in his left eye for the rest of his life because he's 8 years old. I mean, he still has you know, a long life ahead of him. And she just said, okay, just give him eye drops to lubricate his eye. But I know that as an optometrist, like when like humans have facial nerve palsy, you can get acupuncture, you can do stuff like infrared light therapy, or you know, you can do things for it. Like, just, I mean, if it was me, then I got my one side of the face paralyzed, I'd be putting in needles every other day. I'll be going to the acupuncturist, I'll be trying everything, because you know, I've seen people where it's like drooping and you can't move your mouth. Like, it's just So I was just so shocked that she was like, there's nothing you can do for it. Went online and looked up PubMed, which is like the literature for research papers, and I found a study where in mice they had their facial nerve like severed, and they did infrared therapy, and the eye that had the infrared light, like the blink reflex came back faster, but obviously the distance from the nerve to being severed to the eye is actually smaller in rats than in dogs. And I was just trying to like find a way to, you know, put the light on Sebastian's face, because I mean we had tried a little bit of acupuncture on him for his leg, but I was too scared to put it, you know, on his face or his head, with the location being so close to his eye and stuff. So I got my university professor, who's out of retirement. It is very nice to come back and do some safety testing with the infrared light and a panel that acts as a diffuser. And basically we found out that this was safe to use with the properties that I had come up with, and I was using it on him, like just in between like chairs and stuff. And because he was so unwell, I was just so desperate to try everything. And I noticed that, you know, this was happening in the peak of summer, and there were certain things that were making the palsy worse. Like, not in terms of like the blink getting worse, his blink was never there. Like, he would go near it, he wouldn't blink at all, but his face was drooping more, and the face tilt was actually getting worse on one side, like heat, or if he got really excited. So basically I just take him out quickly for a potty, and then we come back inside into the aircon, and I'd have cold water in the fridge, and I feed it to him with a syringe. I had researched that certain types of music can help the dogs, and so I started making my own music with AI, in kind of like that deeper tunes. And I put him under the infrared panel that I had designed, and I started playing the AI music, and he would just go into this deep sleep. So basically our routine was he would wake up, and then he'd go for a walk, and then I'd hand feed him rice, just little bits at a time, because he wasn't able to seal his mouth. And what I actually found out at the neurologist was that the sound that he was making, that really heavy breathing, that like croaking sound, was not actually a cold or an allergy. It was, she said that it was his inability to seal his palate and the side of his mouth. And I realized that when I was looking through all the, you know, the live photos and the videos when he was really sick, and I was, you know, asking him, do you have a cold, and, you know, what's wrong with your breathing, and I was trying to record that as well, that he wasn't blinking in his left eye at that time. And, you know,
do you have a cold? Do you have an allergy?
just looking at those photos just made me so upset, because, you know, dogs can't tell you, they can't tell you that they're sick, and obviously he was so unwell, but I just didn't notice for that, you know, it must have been just under a week that this had started. But I know that it was so inflamed because when I went to touch his neck, he actually screamed, like, so the nerve must have been so inflamed. So Seb, stop snoring. He was getting a little better because his face droop was less. He had less ataxia. He was at the peak, he was walking like a drunken puppy, and it was getting a bit less and he was getting a bit more stable. And I knew that it was getting better when he was like, right, we're gonna go around the neighborhood and go chase the cats, because he loves the cats. And he was able to, you know, hold his body weight against me to be like, I'm gonna go over there. And another thing that I knew he was getting better was like, he at the peak he wasn't even eating any treats, and like, he's a Cavalier, he loves food. How does a dog not love treats? He was refusing treats, and he started banging on the dining table. Hey, like, give me my treat. Like, he had his appetite back in full force, and I was like, welcome back, you know, where have you been? So there were just like slowly some signs that he was getting better like that, and his head tilt was less. Honestly, I was so anxious that he wasn't going to get his blink back, and just like fingers crossed that he was not gonna be a statistic, like not the 1 in 2, the 50% that's never gonna blink again in that left eye for the rest of his life. And I would periodically check his left blink reflex.
Can we test your eyes? Seb, please. Oh dear.
It just was like on the back of my mind constantly, but I just wanted him to get rest, and gave him a good diet, like with like all these extra nutrients. And I think it would have been just under 2 months I was testing his... Seb, stop snoring, please. Shh. So I think just under 2 months, I think it was just under 2 months, I was checking his blink reflex, and I noticed a little flinch, and I got so excited. And I think it would have been like 0.1 of a millimeter, and you're thinking like, how do you even measure 0.1 of a millimeter? But because I'm an optometrist, you just like compare it to the size of the pupil. And then from there, like, I checked it 2 days later, and then it was actually accelerating. It was like moving a lot more, like a millimeter, and then like just kind of accelerating once that little flinch came back. So I'm just testing his blink reflex, and you can see that the pupillary reflex, so the lower eyelid, is moving a little bit, about 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeters. I'm happy to share that Seb's really well now, and he's almost got his blink back in his left eye, and he's just woken up from a nap, so he's pretty tired and a little sulky right now, but he does look so much better. And Thank you for listening to this terrifying journey, but with a happy outcome. Hit subscribe to follow us on more of Sebbie's recovery with his facial nerve palsy. Until next time, bye!